Welcome to the Creative Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lopez Jr. Follow us on Twitter at Creative Coach 47 and on YouTube at Creative Coaching Podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks a bunch for listening. Welcome to the podcast, Coach.
Well, thanks, Mike. Glad to be here.
Coach Adams, I do appreciate you making the time and taking the time to be with us today. I reached out to you, and I'm so glad that you agreed. I look forward to the value that you're going to add today, and what's going to bless our listeners and viewers. And so here again, thanks again. Now, I want to start off like I do every program, Coach. And how are you introduced to the game of basketball?
Well, honestly, I started in gymnastics. And as things went, they wanted you to compete, and then the price went elevated. And at the time, like Dad was like, this is too expensive. This is going to get crazy. So I got introduced to coming home from gymnastics to here is a basketball goal that's in the driveway. And here is your rubber ball. So that's how it started. Yeah. So it was just a total switch. It wasn't, it was just, we couldn't afford gymnastics, at that time. And basketball was a whole lot cheaper to play at the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, no, for sure. My 16-year-old, I had her in gymnastics for a while, then COVID hit, and that kind of just ended that. But yeah, it is not, it's an affluent sport, if you will.
Right.
If that's how you want to put it, right?
School teachers, and I think my mom honestly had taken off at the time because she was about to give birth to my brother. So my sister and his, they're pretty close as far as being born. And so Mom was taking off just because she had a kindergartner or a first grader. And then my sister was young and then about to have my brother. So she just kind of put teaching on a halt. But, I grew up with educators.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That act. Grades, I don't have to bother them. They just get it done. And so it's been a real blessing knowing that pressure is there without me having to put it there. And so it's fantastic. Now, Coach, I want to ask you, what was your experience with those who coached you coming up? Because, you played Jim Smitty in high school, a legend, then Pat Summitt, goodness gracious. What was that like for you, Coach, to experience that type of coaching and from your lens growing up?
Right. Very, very different, but a lot of similarities. Coach Smitty was at one time the most winningest coach in the nation as a high school coach. So, but he had some, old school rules that, a senior started, and they would start up until whenever. So I didn't start my sophomore year until December. And I didn't play my freshman year. I tore my ACL actually at Pat Summitt's camp.
Wow.
When I was an 8th grader. So I missed my 9th grade year, which was not at the high school. But, Coach Smitty, he was ahead of his time as far as he was bringing guys in to practice against.
Yeah.
All we ran was the ball screen action, and we played man-to-man man-to-man.
Yeah.
So it was just, we played spacing. So just not a lot of plays. We played off our defense and, we were just really, really tough kids and played really, really hard. So, just transitioning, from high school to then college, I'm just so grateful that I grew up with a family of coaches and athletes. Yeah. And so, the seed was planted early on, with working hard and, you may not be the most talented or the biggest in the room, but hey, you can be the hardest worker. You can be the best teammate. The intangibles, right? Yeah. So those were introduced really, really early on. And I think, playing for Pat, she elevated me, just as a human in different areas, like with leadership, engaging, how to carry yourself, being vocal. As a point guard, you can read about it in her book. She kicks me out of practice. So, there are multiple stories there, but I think she grew me as a young woman and a leader. And that's where I saw, probably the most growth because, you're all Americans, but when you get to that level, you do have your own 20 square feet. But my
Yeah.
20 square feet at Tennessee was, to outwork people, to be in great shape, have the best motor, to lead, get the ball, where it needed to be as far as an entry pass or in the hands of our scorers, and to bring energy and bring toughness every day. And that was pretty much my 20 square feet. Hit an open three every once in a while if need to do so, and pick up the ball 94 feet. So different expectations as far as what I delivered on the court.
Yeah.
So that challenged me from high school. I led by my action because the ball was in your hands, and you know you're having to score a lot of points if you were going to win. And where at Tennessee, it was different. You were going to do these things which you've done well at the high school level, but this is your main focus. And so, I feel like Pat, we had standards in high
Yeah.
school, and and they were tough and they were hard. But then when we got to Tennessee, those standards, looked a little different. But I would say, without my family, um, without Coach Smitty and the other coaches I had with AAU, and without my faith,
Yeah.
I couldn't say that I would be, ready for Tennessee. I can't say that Tennessee was for everybody.
Right.
But I was very blessed, to be one of the chosen ones, to go and play for her, and um, be introduced to the culture of the definite dozen, to stay here, to play here, to be successful here, and what those behaviors look like, and those are behaviors Pat valued,
Yeah.
and it was going to produce, outcome, obviously, because you have the best kids in the nation on your team, and then you're going to play the best, because the expectations were to be obviously in the Final Four.
Yeah. And that was something that was commonplace, right? So that it was kind of something that you walked into understanding, like um, conference championship or bust, national championship or bust kind of mentality. And
Right.
that seems like a lot of pressure. But if she prepared you properly, it wouldn't be that much pressure. It would just be like getting the job done,
Right.
basically.
And it was just an expectation, but I came in with that expectation. When
Yeah.
you play for the most winningest coach in the nation at high school, you expect to win.
Yeah.
So, but also, I can't say like, okay, it was just, win, was the goal. It was the preparation in
Yeah.
winning. And I played for Rick Enzel in AAU. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, I had the best of the best around me.
Yeah.
And so the preparation for winning, is what you come to understand, that the winning doesn't just show up because you put on, a Bradley Central High School, uniform, or a Tennessee Lady Vol uniform. But I can show you, how those wins stack up, and
Yeah.
it stacks up by putting practices together. So when you start stacking practices, and you're coming together as a team, then those wins happen. And then, if you are talented, and um, you're blessed to go through a season and not have injury, um, your chances are, have grown, to
Yeah.
be able to win a championship.
So, Coach, I would ask you then, at the time, maybe not in high school, or maybe in high school, looking how your experience was as a good player, as a great player, and what was your lens of that? Because sometimes the best players don't really realize the coaching they're getting at the time and experiencing. Were you aware of what you being fed and poured out into by those coaches?
You know, I was aware of who I played for. Yes. And I grew up in a home where, serving each other was very important, and gratitude was
Yeah.
very important, and sharing. So I wasn't like, I was almost probably a little bashful for attention. I really wanted my teammates to come and be interviewed with me, or I wanted them to interview my teammates.
Yeah.
Um, but I had to get through that and understand the responsibility I had,
Yeah.
you know, and being, whether I was the go-to player at high school, or the person that they looked that was my role, to score the points or to defend, or, that was the role that I was blessed. I had the talent. But also, I wanted to be able to get everybody involved.
Yeah.
So, and that was my heart, I was just that kid that was, uh, I think humble, and I wanted to share the ball, but I
Yeah.
also understood, there are certain times, that I needed to go make a play.
Yeah.
Where in college, it was very different. You know, I had to make sure Deidre Charles had the ball at the block, and if she wasn't playing well, I needed to go have a conversation with her, really quick, and sometimes Pat, would have that conversation with me to have with Deidre,
Right.
and so she kinda taught me, that you need to be able to have these conversations, with your teammates, and when you can do that and they respect you and they trust what you're saying, I mean, it's a pretty special moment. She was the best player in the country,
Yeah.
and to be trusting, a younger, teammate,
Yeah.
um, was it was an honor to lead her, to help her, and then, everyone else on the team, but, at the end of the day, I know I led by action,
Yeah.
more so than, vocally,
Yeah.
until I got kicked out of the gym, then I learned how to be.
Well, we all have our days, right? And we all have our moments, but I think it's a learning process, and it's kind of evident you learn from that. And
Yes.
so, being a servant leader is kind of what you're talking about,
Mhm.
and knowing when to pick your spots, time and a place. But actions always speak louder than words, and so that's fantastic, coach. And I think, like I said, leaning into that servant leadership, like you're saying, as you were brought up,
Mhm.
that's kind of how you live your life. Is others before you, and you second, others first, and that's kind of the mindset of a point guard, a true point guard. Like
Right,
you said, knock down that open three when you got it, but for the most part, go feed the
right,
beast. Take care of everybody else, make sure everybody else is going. So
and that's
really,
part of
really cool.
our culture here too, at New Mexico State, and our culture's called Big Belief, and,
Mhm.
the first thing that we talk about is doing family and what our family looks like here, and family means to us, "Forget about me, I love you."
Yeah,
So that means, self is second, and that means the same way in practice, why you work so hard is not for you to receive, it's for your teammates,
yeah,
so, it's a, sometimes it takes time, for everybody to understand that, but I will tell you, when you're serving and you're less focused on yourself, it's a whole different lens you're looking through,
yeah,
um, for sure.
yeah. No, that's fantastic, coach. And I think that's when you look at the coaches you've had. You say you come from a family of coaches as well. That influence can help in so many different ways in leading other people and yourself. Because
Yeah,
that's
right,
one thing most leaders sometimes fail to do, is how are you leading yourself.
right.
That's really key and important. Now, I want to ask you about some of the greatest obstacles that you faced, and how did you overcome them in your career, coach? Because I mean, ups and downs, being fired. I mean, everybody's going to get fired at some point, it seems like, and that's just part of the business. But how have you overcome some of those big obstacles in your career, coach?
Well, I will say this, when it comes to decision making of, separation, between, a school and parting ways, whether you decided or like you said, you get fired. Um, Sometimes you wish those things would have come earlier in life, because there were so many lessons learned,
Yeah,
and so many lessons learned for me as an adult, and just, the blind corners of
yeah,
coaching. And so I would tell you, you know, I feel like I grew, 20 years within, 3 years. Um, and first and foremost, just I was just so blessed to hit pause and
yeah,
really sit down um, and just sit in the presence of God, honestly, and understand, really why you do this. And I thought I understood, but yet I also, even though, you've been at Wichita State, for 9 years, and, you could see basketball evolving. You could see,
mhm,
uh, your players coming in. They everything was just changing, right?
yeah,
And so you have to evolve as a coach. And so I was blessed there, and, I had a wonderful athletic director, before he was moved out, of athletic director at the time. His name was Eric Sexton, and he invested in me and really wanted to help me evolve and um, to really meet this next generation coming in.
Yeah.
And so because you're kind of in that in between. I became a head coach later. I at one time is just even head coach and assistant coach, which I
Yeah.
still enjoy being an assistant. I enjoy both. I think both are very rewarding in their own different ways. But I think the biggest thing, is communication.
Yeah.
You know, uh, Everybody, in a leadership role, they think they have a lot to say, and it's not that you have a lot to say. It's more of, before these kids listen to you, they got to know that you love them.
Right.
And I really, you really do love them. I mean, that's why you're coaching. You're coaching. You're giving them an opportunity. You're wanting to help them. I mean, I was helped by the grace. I got to see it all,
Yeah.
and I just think communication was the biggest thing, of being clear,
Yeah.
being concise, and being compelling and consistent.
Wow.
And so I think those things were really, vital. That's the biggest thing. That, okay, in this program, this is what this looks like, right? So I wanted to be those things: clear, concise, compelling, and consistent.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I'm meeting 15 different humans, right? And
Yeah.
you got to meet them at their place,
Yep.
not your place. So, learning to do that, of lowering, sometimes the expectations.
Yeah.
Um, and you hate to say that, but they're in a growth. I mean, as long as they're working towards that, because you're saying you want them to communicate, that, you want them to lead.
Yeah.
Well, that leadership, or being vocal, would be taught very differently, today, than it
Yeah.
was taught to me, obviously. Um, but I do think there's all kinds of different ways to make sure that that young lady understands the sense of urgency, because
Yeah.
basketball is a game.
Mhm.
It's not who we are. It's what we do, and then we get to use it for a vehicle,
Yeah.
and teaching us life lessons. And you chose a really hard sport, so this is going to prepare you for life,
For
right?
sure.
And because when we get knocked down, it's really about, well, how are you thinking? Like, what are you thinking? Well, the time when I separated from Wichita State, I didn't quite understand everything, but I did have faith to trust God,
Yeah.
and trust His plans that He had for me. And I
Yeah.
didn't care what they were. I just
Yeah.
wanted to understand and make sure that my purpose here on earth, that I was serving, how He wanted me to be.
Yeah.
And so, I think that was really, really huge for me.
Yeah.
Um, was that time, and I would say, um, success is measured so differently with each individual. And so when we talk about success, or we're talking about goals, or having a vision, we really want to talk about the behavior that drives it.
Mm.
And
Wow.
and get away from 10 points, 10 rebounds, whatever. Well, what's the behavior that drives that? I mean, you're playing with 4 other people. And so that's where culture is so important,
For sure.
and your players respecting each other. They're not always gonna, you know, have the same vibe and jive, and get along with this, with each other as far as off the court. But when we walk on this court, again, how we do family, and how we play, it does look a certain way.
Yeah.
And but until you can do all of that as a coach, you have to get to their hearts.
Yep.
And so the ones that you've gotten to their hearts, those are the ones that it's pretty cool to see what they do.
Yeah. Well, how's it go, coach? They don't care how much you know till they know how much you care.
Yep.
And then, here again, in regards to, being in the presence of God and Him leading and guiding you, super important for people to understand that process too. To
Mhm.
understand, like, you have your plans, He has His plans for you. And at the moment, there's things that'll kind of cloud your vision because you're a little bit maybe hurt by the situation. you're confused by a situation, so you can't really see the forest for the trees. But as you step back, and that communication between you and him grows too, in that presence, all of a sudden you're able to communicate better with others
So
and
it's
communicate.
yeah,
Yeah,
instead of living in a land of trying to please everybody, because sure, a
yeah,
coach would love to play everybody, or and you're winning. They've come off what we had won 6 championships, and at the end of the day, um, pleasing turned to perspective.
mm, yeah,
Real quick. Um, and that's probably another thing that I learned about myself. I didn't realize. I did. I didn't want kids to be unhappy. I just wanted them to understand this is going to be hard. So how
yeah,
can you keep your joy in doing hard?
yeah,
How do you keep your joy in doing hard? From how I understand it, is by doing it for others.
yeah,
And so I think, gaining, the perspective of how to teach that, um, through, just God guiding you and your faith. But that was, that was huge for me.
yeah.
And, something today, like basketball should not take away your joy.
Not at all. It didn't give it to you, so it can't take it away. That's kind of the mindset, right, Coach?
Right.
And so you're talking about a lot of things that are so big, and you talked about teaching things through the game. And
Mhm.
it's something that we just do and something that they just do, but it doesn't define us, nor is it our identity. And I think it's something important that a lot of coaches need to, so that they don't get frustrated in their own careers.
Right.
That it's not who you are; it's what you do. And if it
Right.
defines you, you need to go back and refocus your
Right.
why, refocus your like you said, what makes you successful? What's the mindset that's taking you there? And
And
so,
sometimes it works out and right, and sometimes it doesn't. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes and sometimes, I've told people because they have called me and, how'd you handle this situation? And sometimes you just run out of time.
right,
Some parents thank you,
yeah,
in that decision making, and some don't.
yeah,
They come after you. I mean,
yeah,
it's mind blowing.
yeah,
It's confusing.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, doing a heart check, you have to do a heart check on yourself.
yeah,
And I'm sure, I've made many mistakes and many with others of, seeing like something that they could do and really wanting them to do it, but
yeah,
I can't make them do it.
right,
They got to see it.
yeah,
Um, sure, I love to infuse hope um, and be that hope dealer. We got this because I was that kid, of tearing their ACL, hearing you'll never play basketball again in your life.
that's tough.
Um, to interesting to say, the one doctors in Knoxville said no, and I wasn't okay with that. And I said, Dad, find me a doctor that'll do the surgery because, I was in 8th grade and you're cutting through a growth plate at the time. And so we did find a doctor, and that doctor happened to be Pat's doctor in the
Yeah,
Olympics.
yeah,
And so, in the recruiting, she called him and he said, I don't know anything about basketball, but I know she outworked you in rehab. So that's
wow,
probably why she signed me.
wow,
And it was just the pure love of, being around a group of friends, and I love to see them happy. I love to see their faces when, they won. I love
yeah.
to be there for them when we lost. All those things, just wanting to be a great teammate, and those are winning ways to us is, being a great teammate.
Now, Coach, I want to ask you about. We talk about success. What do you consider success? Knowing what you know now, having won a national championship, conference titles, things of that nature, having a lot of success in this game. What do you consider true success within the confines of what you do in the game of basketball?
I think that's where, like I said it before, every success story that walks out of here is their own.
Right.
Some of it is them making their experience here what they want to make it.
Yeah.
How I get to add on to it is when they need me, because I want players to be independently dependent on me.
Mm.
But if I stay clear, concise, compelling, and consistent,
Yeah.
they'll see my light,
Yeah.
and my love, and that they do have, really not just a coach, but a cheerleader in their corner, or
Yeah.
somebody they can trust, they can call, at any time. Um, it doesn't always have to be the good times. So, how I measure, really success is different. I look at myself. Did I get better today? Did I grow some weight today? Did I serve today? And how did I serve? And so those behaviors are something that I value. And to me, uh, those are winning ways, and they produce success.
Yeah.
It may be for someone else, but that's okay. You
Yeah.
know, when you receive your flowers, you receive your flowers, and that's usually done at different times. Sometimes kids think you're going out, sometimes they think you 10 years down the road. Um, they think you at all different times.
Yeah, no, that's kind of one of the peculiar things about being a coach. If you've done it long enough, is you'll have one of those knuckleheads come back 10 years and say, wow, you meant so much when you did this and you said that. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, when I was telling you these things or conveying these things to you, you were rolling your eyes or you look like you were so disinterested.
Right.
But they
And
remember.
and they think it's hard what basketball requires. I'm like, Jody's not making you do this. Basketball's making you do this. Like, you gotta be in shape, you gotta have
Right.
skill set, you gotta have some grit about you. And
Yeah.
so, again, you've chose something hard. How are
Yeah.
we gonna do it, and how are we gonna grow? And so, yeah, it's just, it is. It's just very interesting how they all grow in their own unique way. And I just find it a blessing to get to watch them, because playing basketball and running sprints or running the mile or 300, however your performance coach tests them, or divorce or
Wow.
pregnancy, right?
Wow.
Um, losing a home, losing your job. I
Yeah.
mean, that hard versus this hard? You gotta be kidding me, right?
Yeah.
But the things of what happens in basketball with injury. And I'll tell you, we had a young lady here, her name was Tylee Jones, and she was just such an inspiration to her coach. Um, hardly got on the floor, just really struggled with some injury issues. And
Mhm.
but the kid, how she kept her joy, and how she brought joy to her teammates and to her coaches, and to me specifically, um, was, like I said, just a blessing. So I know when that kid hits something hard in life, which we don't want any of that to happen,
Right.
to anybody, but I know how she's gonna get back up.
Yeah.
And she's faith driven, and she has a belief system. And you could tell she wanted to grow here, she wanted to learn here. And so she would always go around at the end of practice and high five everybody. So our first practice, I did it and got to talk about her a little bit. And then the next practice, one of her former teammates took over. So you're always leaving a legacy.
Yeah. And those are culture builders. And because that's what, in essence, what it is culture, environment. And I think that says a lot, because whether you believe you have a culture or not, you have one.
Yeah.
Whether you're trying to create a culture or you're just kind of oblivious to it, there's a culture
Yes.
taking place. And I think that's, players like that build the culture just in and of itself with those actions. Now, Coach, I want to ask about mentorship, because it's really important for a lot of us. I have 2 or 3 mentors that I just really lean on.
Mhm.
How important is mentorship for you, Coach, in your career?
Well, I think it's been really, really important. I think one of the toughest things was, losing Pat, and I lost my father my first year here. So
Wow.
two huge mentors, just in the fact of, wired the same, um, you know, loved everybody. Everybody was welcomed into your home. And so both were very, very similar. And so in losing them, that was really tough. I mean, there's nobody that replaces them ever.
Right.
But my mother has been a mentor, and I would say she's my biggest mentor. Here, as I've embarked, the second part of your life. So,
Yeah.
but my mother, our culture coach, Jody Karzak, um, is a huge mentor of mine. and so I'm naming people you don't even know.
Well,
Uh,
I know him now.
yeah, here in town, Mother Hubbard, she's in the Nashville Music Hall of Fame. She was a promoter back in the day. So, your Bob Hope really is the one that she would say got her going. And
Wow.
she's had every concert in here. And but she'll be 98 this month. So just to sit down with someone with that amount of wisdom, and
Mhm.
Wanda Bowman that owned Ashley Furniture here in town, it just recently sold
Wow.
it. So I've just had it's I think I gained so much wisdom in that time that I got to just, sit and be an assistant, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting the wisdom that has just been poured into me, or meeting them eye to eye and what they see and what you see, um, has just, I think, given me hope, you
Yeah.
know.
That's fantastic, Coach. I mean, it's really inspiring because you take people from all different walks of life that can mentor you, even if you're a sports coach.
Right.
It doesn't people in business, people that raised you, all
Mhm.
that. You can find mentors in all the spaces because a lot of times we look for our mentors to be in the same line of profession or having been in the shoes that we're filling right now. The
Right.
reality is, life is life, and like we talked about, your players, my players, going through life and teaching them different things through the game. So
Mhm.
important when mentorship is presented to know who to go to, even if they're not in the game. Really,
Right.
really important.
Yeah, and I would say that, if I had to name one, in the game, which may come shocking to people, would be Keitha Adams, which followed me at Wichita State. We're really good friends, and we bounce a lot of things off of each other, and
Yeah,
just what the world is like with NIL, and then what it's like at your own university. What are the struggles, and so to have someone like that that's just vested, and has been around the block, and in all different situations. I would say she's a blessing for sure to have.
yeah,
Just on that team that they're all a little bit of everything.
yeah,
For
yeah. It's like a personal board of directors.
right, right,
That
right, right.
I've
Yep.
heard it said that way before, and that's what I take it as for myself. Now, Coach, I want to ask you about preparation for the next generation of coaches because, like you mentioned, NIL,
Mm.
the portal, things of that nature, everything's changing, and it'll change again at some point. But how important is for you personally to help prepare the next generation of coaches coming up, just so that they don't get, I guess, disenfranchised by the whole process, and that they learn the business?
Well, you've seen a lot of good ones get out, haven't we?
Yeah,
And just because, in a way, probably feel like the pay for play, which is really what it is,
for sure.
has just really taken a lot from what we have learned this experience is about. I think, if I hop into that boat, I would be upset. I'd be disappointed. But the one thing that I've learned through everything, this, just walking the earth, right, journey, is that, what is my heart about?
Yeah,
So put me anywhere, my heart's not going to change.
right.
You know? And so I'm a teacher.
Mhm.
I'm a mentor. I'm a problem solver. I like to connect dots. Those type of things. And so just really encouraging this generation to not get caught up in society. You
Yeah,
either have NIL or you don't. And the kid that you're going to NIL, well, why are you NILing them? Like, what makes them so special? Well, sure, all of us need a certain level of talent, right?
yeah,
To be able to play, whether you're P4 or you're at the mid major, you have to have that talent. But what is it that separates them?
yeah,
What is it that you would want to pay them to keep them here in your culture?
yeah,
Because they're that type of human. And so I would encourage, that generation to not be transactional,
Ooh, wow.
and to be transformational.
Yep, that's huge.
And, and that's hard because you have someone, that, like, when you take over programs, you walk into programs, and I walked into every program differently. Like, this just looks miserable for you to do. Are you unhappy? Like, I think this is too hard for you. Do you want to play at a different level? Do you, like, it's hard, like it's really hard. And so there's that hard part of this may not be the right fit, where a transfer portal, I think, is important. Um, but, you know, to go in and say this kid's, and treating this like it's the pros, well, that's fine, if you choose that way, but you have an 18-year-old that you're treating like a pro.
Yeah.
And we all know that, their brains and maturity and emotional, side of things is not developing until what, late 20s,
Yeah.
you
If
know, and so, I've just chosen, to continue, even though my heart has changed. I am different today than, I hope, than I was last year.
Yeah.
I hope I get better every year.
Yeah.
Um, but at the end of the day, um, my main goal is that we really understand what, the journey of life is about. And basketball is just part of that journey. We're all going to have to hang it up at some point in time.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard. I'd say the hardest people to teach that to are your fierce competitors.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah. No, because that's something that if they don't have anything to compete for, it's almost like, well, there goes my drive. When
Mhm.
in reality, a lot of us are competing against ourselves. Like you said, get better every day. And that's the tagline for my podcast: get better every day. I mean, it's one of those things where you compete against yourself. You can never lose that competitive drive. And
Right.
it's not about defeating somebody. It's making sure you're not defeated.
Yeah,
And
and not letting your blessings go to waste, right?
yeah,
I mean, use your
yeah,
talent, use your given talents, and I think the more authentic, we are, and understanding, too, how people view me, and, because you've played for Pat, or you've done X, Y, and Z in your career, I'm still like, sure, there is one thing that's been consistent, and it has been winning.
yeah,
Um, but what's driving the winning is truly from my heart. It's what I learned a long time ago.
yeah,
Um, like I said, there are certain behaviors that winners have,
mhm,
that they just really, really do. And if you want to instill that to your players, or, with your coaches, and get them to understand, then it takes pressure really off of everybody.
for sure. Yeah,
The biggest pressure, hopefully, it is like, who to put the ball in their hands. I mean, like, they've all prepared.
yeah.
You
It
know,
simplifies things when you've done that.
absolutely.
There's no confusion or fear when
Mm-mm.
you've prepared properly.
And we
And
don't wanna play in fear. We don't wanna, coach in fear. And
yeah, at
I mean,
all.
I've chosen not to. I don't care what happens to me. ACL, I wasn't gonna play in fear. Take the knee brace off. It's time to play. The doctor said I could play.
Yeah,
God put you in a position to coach again. I'm not gonna coach in fear.
yeah. You can't. Fear is paralysis, and
Absolutely.
anytime you operate in fear, you're going to make bad decisions, and also in the process, the position, like you talking about, the positioning of your heart. Uh, Fear wasn't given to you the day you were born,
No,
so it has no place there in your heart.
correct.
And so, yeah, the moral of the story, Coach, if what I'm getting, and I'm getting it real loud and clear, your position of your heart matters, and be transformational. Like that's
Yeah.
because right now we live in that transactional mindset, and it's hard because I've talked to other coaches, even some in the P4, that are like, "Hey, so how's it now? Is it more transactional than transformational?" And they're
Mhm.
like, "Well, yeah, we're trying to find a balance. It's kind of
Right,
hard, especially when you have a transfer coming in for 1 or 2 years.
right.
It's going to be strictly transactional. That is, you don't have the time to build the
And
transformational sometimes.
and
So
it's getting harder because sometimes contracts are getting shorter.
yeah, for sure.
Mhm. They're not your 5-year or whatever, and they're a 3-year, or,
Yeah,
so, that's where, again, you got to make those decisions. You got to make them wisely, and who you put beside you,
yeah,
you know, um, and taking over programs and running programs, is truly important.
yeah. It's still, I think, for those that are going to see long-term success, even in this day and age, it's building a program, not a team. And if you do that, you'll find a lot of success, and you'll have integrity dignity and consistency and
Mhm.
clarity. All these things, all the things you talked about as well, Coach. Compelling. That comes along with building a program and being authentic. So
Yep.
I really do appreciate all that breakdown, Coach. This is real good. I promise you, it's been real good.
Thank
Now,
you.
Coach, I want to ask you about the things you've learned about yourself throughout your career, because here again, you said, I hope I'm not the same coach that I was last year.
Mhm.
And moving forward, I'm sure there's going to be more growth. But what have you learned about yourself personally throughout your career?
You know, your parents always say it, what your eyes see, what your ears hear,
Hmm.
are big influences on you, and that's
Sure.
why we protect our eyes, our ears, right?
Hmm.
And I'm just beyond grateful that my eyes got to see what my eyes got to see, and my
Hmm.
ears got to hear what my ears got to hear.
Wow.
And because that's transformational,
Hmm.
because and I'll never forget, the conversation Pat had with me in the training room, and um, I was out playing pickup probably where I shouldn't be, and we were talking about just being a role model and, being in the right situations and, who you run with the most, like, do they aspire to be, leaders? Do they have leadership qualities? And she begins to, just ask, and we're just in a conversation. But, I remember her telling me, you're going to lead one day, you're going to speak one day, you're going to speak in front of hundreds. And,
Wow.
um, but the one thing that you need to understand is that you win with people.
Wow.
So who you put around you is very important, and you can't save everybody.
Wow. Yeah.
So, that's one of the things that I learned about myself, that, I can't save everybody. I can't make them do what I know that they need to do. Sometimes you just have to, let them go, and, unfortunately, life will teach them,
Hmm.
but you're always there for them,
Yeah.
you know?
It's like my kids. I can't save them from every flame, and
Nope.
I'd love to, but then I'd be ripping them off of that. What you're talking about, the eye and the ear gate. There's certain things they need to see and hear. There's plenty of other things they don't need to see or hear.
Right.
But some of those tough things in life are what they have to go through, so that they can become who God's called them to be. Right.
Right.
Ultimately.
Absolutely. So
So
I think that's probably the biggest thing for me is, just the learning experiences, have just really stuck with me. And, whether it was home as a kid, or, with Pat or Holly or Mickey, at Tennessee, or at Auburn with Joe Champy. I mean, you name it. I
another
just
great coach.
see it a lot and hear a lot, um, and learn. So, I was influenced that way. So I just I look at myself, and I want to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Fantastic.
but
Yeah.
I've grown in, so many different ways. We probably don't have enough time to get into that on this podcast. But I think, one that, like I said, one of the biggest one is, you can't make them do it.
Yeah.
You can't. They got to want to do it. The want to
Yeah.
has to be there. Their heart posture has
Yeah.
to be right, and that's where, when it comes to recruiting, we do a deep dive in what the family's about.
Yeah. Super important for that, as far as like you talk about the fit, things of that nature. The players that I've helped and assisted to get to different programs, that was always the thing. Was this a good fit for you? Everything, I mean, so many different variables, but ultimately it comes down to, do these people care about you? These
Right,
people are going to invest into you.
right,
Obviously, the university can invest into you by giving you the offer, but on a personal and heart level, people want to invest in you. So
yeah,
really, really important. Now,
sure.
Coach, I want to ask you about, we've talked a lot throughout the years since COVID about mental health, right?
Mhm.
How important that is. But how important is mental health, emotional, and spiritual health for coaches moving forward?
I always I said it, and I've said it for a long time. What are we doing for our coaches? Um, who do they get to talk to? Where is their support system? And, um, I think it's really, really important. And I think it's important for us to hit pause. I think it's important for us to hit reset.
Yeah.
Um, to be refreshed, walking into a new year. I mean, now a new year is a new team and it's a new way. It's not the same way. I mean, so when you get to have, you know, players that stay and they choose to stay, I mean, that's a blessing because some of your culture is already there and
Yeah.
implemented. Um, but I just to have any longevity because it's just like I was talking to a friend today and she was like, "You're doing what tonight?" And I said, "Well, we've broken our team up into groups and because we had a big class graduate, we got so many new ones coming in that the coaches need to sit and get to know them. So we're doing small groups and we're doing it over dinner and um, at the assistants' houses, and so it's a little bit more intimate
Yeah.
and just really to take a dive deep into who they are and what they're about and them into us, and we'll rotate every week." But she was like, this is really a lifestyle, isn't it? And I was like, yes,
Wow.
it is, because you're pouring into other people's children
Yeah.
and their kids. And and that's what it's always been about. You're not taking time out of your night just because you have to. We I hire people that want to,
Right.
and they want to get to know these young people because they're not all going to be able to come to me at all times, even though you want them to. They're going to have to talk to the assistant, and but you also want to have a respectful relationship where kids do want to walk in here and tell you, everything that's going on.
Yeah. That's big time, coach, because you're talking about multiplying yourself into other people. So if you surround yourself with like-minded folks, then you don't have to be the Bugs Bunny on first, Bugs Bunny on second,
Right,
trying to put out all these fires.
right,
You have people that represent you and represent the system, the quality, culture that you have going, and really, really important. So I like how you're laying that out. Now, coach, I want to ask you about what your why is. What is your why? Why do you do what you do?
I really think I'm in a profession, and and I say that it's my career, it's what I do, but I'm here to serve. I'm here to give opportunity. Um, I'm here just to be there for a kid or an assistant coach to be able to help them out in some way, whether it's move on to the next program they coach at or next program they play at.
Yeah.
I'm here to serve, and and serving looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to serve these young people, because some have parents, some don't.
Yeah.
Um, so you become a little bit of everything, you
Yeah.
know, to all of the individuals. But, if in some way that I've been able to serve them, been able to help them, been able to provide, and because there's three things that I always talk about, our kids always have food, shelter, and love.
Wow.
And the
Yeah.
love that we talk about here is big love. And so I have to explain that a lot. That doesn't mean everything you want, you get. You'll have what you need for sure, and sometimes you get what you want,
Yeah.
too, but you get honesty.
Yeah.
Here, that's big love. You get
Yeah.
transparency.
Yeah.
Um, you'll always have somebody to take care of you.
Yeah.
In the darkest moment, we won't flee, we won't run. Your head coach won't run.
Yeah.
So that's my why.
Fantastic, coach. That's so healthy for anybody that you come in contact with, not just your players. If that's your why, I mean, it's just almost a holistic approach to life and building relationships, because that's what this whole thing is really about. Uh,
Yes.
when we leave this earth, the only thing we'll have left is the relationships we fostered and built. Right?
Right.
That's truly what we leave behind.
That's
Now,
right.
coach, I want to ask you. My last question is always about legacy, and not that you're getting ready to put out to pasture or anything like that. But I do ask, I mean, even the newest coaches, and they come in, and I ask that question. It's just a way to kind of spark a thought about where we're at and where we're headed and how we're operating. But what would you want to be said of you when your time with the game is all said and done?
I think the natural things are always said about me just because you are a competitor. You played at Tennessee. You're a winner. But ultimately, really, what I think tickles my heart is that a kid says she believed in me.
Yeah.
Believed in me when nobody else did. She gave me an opportunity. She gave me a scholarship when no one else did. Um, when I didn't think I could, I trusted her, and I worked through that hard, and I did it. And I think that kid coming back and saying, you know, thank you for believing in me. And so, um, those are the special times. And I've been like I said, a blessed coach. I can say it over and over and over to hear those situations. And it's not always on the court. It's off the court. It's becoming a doctor. It's
Yeah.
becoming a mother. It's owning my own business. So, those things that to say, she believed in me, um, would be an honor to have, a trail behind my name.
Coach, thank you for this, man. This was so good. I
Um,
appreciate you making the time to be with us, and it's been a blessing for me. I took notes. I'm ready. You got me ready to go now, fired up,
well, good.
and so I hope and I know that's what value you've added now to the platform. So very appreciative, and I thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate you, Mike, for having me. I was honored to be on.
All right.